Okay.
Okay, excellent.
So, Tom, you start out.
Oh, okay. So as you know, we've been having these conversations. We haven't had one now for, God, it's about 14 months, I guess. And you may have seen some of them, but basically what we do is just start off, get a little bit of background, how you got involved with the club and all of that, and then it just becomes a conversation. We, everyone has a little different story, and, we've got 2 staff Commodores here, and in both cases, I think you went through interesting times. So I'm less familiar with when you were the Commodore and what was going on, but like to
hear off.
But it was certainly a challenging year for you too, Chris. So anyway, why don't you give us a little bit of background? I know there's quite a history here in terms of your involvement with CYC. It goes back a ways.
Well, it goes back to Chris as a baby.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Chris could start out with, what was it like to grow up in the Corinthian Yacht Club?
Well, I know a lot about Pneumonia Alley, and I don't know, I just hung out here on the weekends and pumping water out of Dad's boats, and I was the youngest of 3, so I just did what the 2 older ones did and followed them around and tried not to get in the way so that they'd send me home to Mom. But no, this has been my home all my life. And Bill and I met here.
You met here?
We did.
Yeah. Wow.
And that must have been...
The scene of the crime.
We did. We met here, we got married here, and
Had our wedding here.
had our wedding here.
Wow.
Wedding.
Yeah, and when you met, I remember you saying, "Ooh, I met this cute guy."
Well,
That was you.
I think
So
it was
when-
more the airline pilot, and he was cute besides
Oh.
that.
Oh, I
Those might have been back in my cute days. I don't know.
Well, I had been living
Many
in
years
Truckee
ago.
for 4 years, so I'd been away from the family. So I came back home and was living with my sister until I got situated, and there was a wedding here, of which Bill was the best man at the wedding, and it was a Corinthian member, Bruce Graham, was getting married on the deck, and Bill was the best man.
Oh.
And I wasn't really invited to the wedding, but it was kind of open to all the club members. And my sister, since I was living with her, said, "Oh, come on, you can go." So that's where we met.
And Bill, were you already a member of the club?
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah, I've been a member here about 47 years or
Wow.
something like that.
You were, you were, we were 69, I think you were 74
Yeah.
when you became a member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you joined, you didn't know each other. Yeah.
No,
No.
you could tell the story, but it was because of my brother-in-law that he joined the club. But I was living in Truckee
Right.
when he joined the club, so we didn't know each other.
Yeah, so
And
tell
didn't
us
have
the
any
story
intentions
how-
of meeting each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had fairly recently moved out from New York. I was based in New York, and so was fortunate enough to get based in San Francisco. So I had recently moved out, and I bought a Ranger 26, and so I was planning on racing in YRA the next season. And of course, you have to be a yacht club member
To race.
to race in YRA. So the Ranger 26 people had a picnic over on Angel Island. And
Long distance cruise.
no, this was before the long distance cruise. So anyway, Chris's brother-in-law, her sister's husband, Dick,
Late husband.
late
Yeah,
husband,
yeah.
Dick Cardozo,
Dick Cardozo, yeah.
was the president of the Ranger 26 fleet. And so I went over there, took my boat and went over to Angel Island for this meeting and picnic. And Dick, her brother-in-law, Dick Cardozo, said to me, he said, "Well, Bill, are you gonna race your boat this season in YRA?" And I said, "Well, I plan to." I said, I'm in the process right now of joining the Instant Yacht Club. And he said, well, he says, why don't you join the Corinthian? And I said, I'd love to join the Corinthian Yacht Club, but I don't know anybody over there. And he said, well, you know me. That was it.
And where were you living? Were you living in the city or?
Yes.
I think that's what happened to many of it still happens to many members, prospective members. Oh, I don't know anybody. Well, now you do.
Yeah.
Now you do. Now you really do.
Right.
So yeah, we have heard that before.
Yeah.
It's the sense of, sure, come on with me and sign the papers and you're done. So that was in '74.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're probably some of the oldest longtime members here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Will Deedy and us, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So you joined initially to race, and then obviously got more involved with the club on the way. What was the path to get involved to the point where you became a Commodore?
Well, I was asked to. I had bought a slip in the harbor, first on B line and then on A line, and I was asked to become a member of the harbor company. It was a separate entity
Right.
at that time, but almost 100% of the slip owners in the harbor were Corinthian members. So I got on the harbor board, and it just went from there. Then I was asked to become a member of the board, which I did, and served 3 years there. And then the nominating committee came and asked me to be rear Commodore. So, and then it just went from there.
And that was in
But a bit.
late '80s, '90s.
He was Commodore 90 and 91.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this whole cycle started basically
Right.
in like the early to mid.
Well,
80s.
started, the late '70s or early '80s. I became a board member.
So you hadn't been member very long before you actually started to go that route.
Yeah.
Oh,
And you also had to juggle your schedule with your day job too.
Yeah, with flying, I had to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One of the stories that I had heard was, and not even having to do with this last renovation, but during your tenure, the dining room in particular didn't quite look the way it looks today.
No, it looked like a gold rush age brothel in San Francisco.
Red flocked
Red flocked
wallpaper
wallpaper.
everywhere.
It was, well, you remember what it was.
I don't, it's funny, I cannot remember that. I don't know why I have blocked that out.
It was in here
but
too.
I have.
It
The
was
red
every-
flock
it
was
was-
everywhere.
It was everywhere.
Remember that.
So did it take a little bit of work to convince people that?
Oh, yeah, well, of course, just like always, there are members who don't want to spend another nickel.
Yeah.
And there are those who are, I guess, more progressive that want to, saw better things for the club. And I had to convince the membership that this was what had to be done. And we had a really excellent architect named Del Branston who designed all.
He was a member.
He was a member,
At
yeah.
least I was going to say.
And he redid all of those columns and the wainscoting and moldings and.
Well, he researched it all, and he made sure that the architecture was authentic to the period of the building.
Yeah, so
and
this is-
he was very particular about making it right.
Wow.
And so this is supposedly an Edwardian style building. So everything he did or designed in the dining room went along with that period, with the Edwardian period. And I think it turned out rather well.
It really did. How long did it take to, once you got the go ahead? Was this
probably, maybe 2 years altogether, I would say.
It was your second year as Commodore? You couldn't have done it in your first year.
No, it took longer than that. but I think it started in my first year as Commodore, but I don't think it was finished.
Because the club didn't have any money,
Yeah.
one of those years.
Hmm.
So you couldn't have done it, so.
Well, we didn't have any money that first year. We almost shut the doors.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happened is that it's when the IRS cracked down on the
50%.
15%. And none of the clubs were doing it. And they weren't keeping track of it. And all of a sudden, the IRS was slapping fines
Yeah.
and penalties on all the yacht clubs. And I believe we got a fine of
$75,000 we owed the IRS.
Wow.
And we didn't have it, that's what I'm saying, we almost shut the doors.
But was that when we had a little assessment or the first assessment?
Assessment?
Yeah, a special assessment.
Did you? I don't think you did an assessment.
No.
I don't recall
No.
that.
Oh, okay.
No, we never
Okay.
did an assessment. I'll tell you what, believe it or not, what saved the club was,
Well, you did try and get a dues increase of $15.
yeah, which the membership wouldn't give me.
They didn't, they turned it down,
Oh.
even though it
Even,
meant,
even knowing what was
meant
at
that-
stake.
yeah,
Yeah.
even though they meant the club was gonna have to possibly shut down. They
Yeah.
wouldn't give him
Still couldn't give it.
$15 a month.
So anyway, what saved us, sitting here in this boardroom, conducting a board and flag meeting, this young member of ours named Kevin Riley came into the board meeting and he said, I know how you can save the club. Raise the locker fees.
Oh, really?
Because he didn't
That-
need any approval to
We
do
didn't
it.
need an approval or membership approval to do that. So that's what we did, and it saved the club.
Wow.
So there must have been, I mean, a lot more lockers at that time that,
Must have been, I'm sorry.
a lot more lockers in use.
Oh,
versus-
yeah. Oh, there
versus
were.
today,
Oh, yeah.
in order
Yeah.
to generate
Yeah.
that much money
Yeah,
that
that kind
would
of
save
money.
the club. And so do you remember sort of how much the locker rent was?
I
was in?
knew you were going to ask me that, and I'm sorry, I don't know
I
how
don't
much.
think it was exorbitant.
No, it wasn't
Um,
exorbitant.
It
We,
was like $10 or something more a month.
well, we only had one complaint, and that was from a staff Commodore. I won't mention who, but anyway, he saw the light. I just told him, I said, we have to be fiscally responsible, and we have to keep the doors to the club open. So
I think that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing, actually, that
But that's what it took.
what
yeah.
it took to save the club.
Yeah.
I mean,
Really?
Yeah,
I
and
would
I'm
have
sure-
thought it took a lot, like a special assessment or something,
Yeah.
a lot more. So that's
I know.
pretty amazing.
I can't recall what we've ever been assessed for.
That's I've not in the various conversations we've had it's always sounded that even going by our bootstraps we've been able to get loans, or we issued some bonds that members bought, and a number of
Or
different.
you initiated the no initiation fee to,
Well, that was in
that was
97.
another desperate time.
That was desperate.
Yeah.
And you solved the problem.
That was desperate.
Yeah.
That was desperate. I mean, that was
Yeah.
another time, I think, where we almost had to close the doors.
Yeah.
And I remember the Women's Auxiliary, as it was called back then. I mean, we had our own money, and we sort of kept our own money.
Right.
But it went to, well, can you help us with some paint for the walls? I mean, it was really down to the nitty gritty what the club was asking for. But I thought one special assessment was when the elevator was put in.
Oh,
I don't
was it
recall.
actually an assessment or was it volunteer? Because my mother was behind a lot of that.
Okay.
But I don't remember the club being assessed, but I
don't
could be
remember that being
wrong.
an assessment.
Okay.
But I think it was volunteer, people were asked to contribute. Could be wrong about that.
Okay.
Sort of like what's happened most recently during COVID to help with the staff and people. Again, it was all voluntary and people volunteered.
Yeah, the club membership really stood up
Right.
for that.
Comes through when need be.
When need be, yeah. So you had 2 terms as Commodore, and they were successive?
Yes.
And what was the story behind that? Because normally, you know, in the normal times, you have a succession, you work up the flag, and after 1 year of being Commodore, that's that's enough.
That's enough, yeah. Well, they, probably 2 reasons. One is I'm a slow learner, I guess, and the other is they couldn't find anybody else stupid enough to do it. So, but I had a rather unusual climb, if you want to call it, up the flag. I was never a vice commodore.
You went from rear to Commodore. Is there a story you can tell behind that, or?
Well, there's quite a story, but I'd rather not get into it.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine.
So you did your 2 years, and and after the 2 years, you said, "That's it.
That's enough.
I'm done. Let's go
enough.
sailing or
I
whatever."
was more than happy to pass the gavel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the club was a little split at the time.
Yeah.
There was some division.
Yeah.
And during this time, were you involved in any of the, I'm sure you were, the committees and what have you?
Yeah, I had to step up quite a bit because the club was split, so a lot of people wouldn't take on roles. So I think I was the auxiliary president. I
Well,
think
Chris
both
was
of
more
us.
than that, I'll tell you. When I was rear commodore, we didn't have a race council. Rear commodore had to do everything, had to
Right.
go to the YRA and sign up for all
It's
the
a big job.
races.
Yeah.
And run them, and find a committee boat and run the races. And so when I went to the allocation meeting from YRA, I was
Overzealous, I think is the word.
overzealous.
I can do this. I can do that. Sure, I'll take that over.
I know someone like that.
So I signed up for every single race that was available.
He wanted to turn this into a racing yacht
Racing
club
yacht club.
on his own back.
So I ended up signing us up for 52 races that year.
Well, that's
Oh my
And
goodness.
that's
We ran them
good.
all.
Once a week.
Like
yes.
a race a week? Yeah.
And more, and I never could have done it without Chris, ever. She was,
We'd spent a lot of weekends out on Knox, on our Islander 36, running races.
You were the committee boat.
oh yeah. Well, that's what I was saying, that we didn't have a race council.
No.
So I had to find a committee boat or be the committee boat. So in most cases, we were the committee boat.
Yeah, yeah. No, people don't realize that haven't done these things, realize how much goes into just staging a
Rear
race.
Commodore is a tough job.
It was,
job.
yeah, very, very,
It
very,
is
very tough.
probably,
The
well,
hardest.
now there's the race council, but it's
a big job.
It's a big
It's a
job.
big job and a lot of responsibility.
Yeah,
And
because,
you have the reputation of the club.
I mean, that's the thing, you have the reputation of the club. And I'm sure it's still that way.
Yeah.
And,
Yes?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
but I mean, I do know that you were so involved with
Well,
anything.
Bill was also flying, so he was gone a lot, so I had to step in.
You had to fill in the blanks, yeah.
Well, you also filled in the blank as far as being out on the water and racing. I mean, the two of you were always
Yeah.
racing, or you did it on your own and for one whole YRA season with
No,
Night Train, wasn't that Night Train?
No, I'm not a whole one, but there were YRA races that I had to be the skipper on the boat,
Right.
which I did it reluctantly.
So you talked a little bit, and we don't need to get into the details, but you know, like all families, sometimes there can be divisions, and then, as they say, time heals all wounds. What got us back together again more in a more unified way? Because it sounds like the division of the two sides, they were pretty far apart for a while.
I can't,
They
can't
were,
put my
yeah.
finger on one thing that changed it. I think it was
Just
just
time heals all.
Yeah, it was just a matter
Maybe
of
new
time.
members coming in that really didn't have an
And-
axe to
and
grind.
people- takes a lot of energy
Yeah.
to be negative.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There was, I will say the division of the club came, when Bill was Commodore, there was a lot of theatrical events going
Events.
on. There was a lot of singing in the bar. There was a group of members that put on all the shows upstairs that were absolutely phenomenal. They were fantastic. So I think the division came with the group that appreciated the theatrical part and the musical part because they were loud, and then there was a group of people that wanted a quieter club.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the divisions came. And I think when all this turmoil happened, I think the theatrical people just quit putting on the shows.
Oh,
Yeah, which was a shame
Because they were fabulous.
Yeah.
Because Mary Ellen Wetleson, God rest her soul,
yeah,
I know.
yeah.
she was behind a good many of those.
I know.
I mean, people
She participated. And
people who didn't know, she was so talented.
Yeah, yeah.
So talented that a lot of people don't realize that about her unless they were involved in these productions and
That's right.
saw her.
Yeah, I had, because I've been scanning all these telltales. And so, of course, when you scan, you sit there and you look at all the pictures, and there was all the shows, and there was a lot of Mary Ellen.
Yes,
And,
yes.
well, I think the divide was coming from the social members as opposed to the racing members, and which way
Yeah.
the club was going to go. And I think it found its way down the middle.
Right.
Wouldn't you
Right.
say, though, I mean, there were a lot of racing going on at that time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was not, I think in today's world, the social aspect
It's more prevalent now.
It's more prevalent now.
Yeah,
But in those days,
we
it
definitely
was-
were back then more of a racing, sailing
Sailing,
club than we are today.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, kind of, it gets at Chris and me because we would like to see it back the other way. with
Right.
sailing.
Exactly.
Sure.
I was
Racing.
I think
It's coming back.
I think
Yeah.
I think the pendulum is
Yeah.
You're right.
swinging a little
Yes.
bit in that direction.
right, I think that we got a little sparse on the racing side of it a number of years ago, but it's coming back.
I think it
Yeah.
is coming back. It's
Yeah.
coming back, and I think, looking at the membership and the younger members coming in that are,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
maybe-
what they want to do,
Right.
to be out there, and I think so. It's just gradually,
Well, our
Coming
harbor
back.
and the size of it is always going to be a hamstring for
Yeah.
Sure.
us.
yes.
Sure.
Those are the two things that have hamstrung this club more than anything, the size of our harbor and the size of our parking lot.
Yes.
And there's really not a whole lot we can do about that.
No.
But one thing I have always wanted to see is more kids, more junior sailing. It hasn't been successful. I tried to start a junior sailing program when I was rear Commodore. And we had a whole slew of El Toros.
Yes, there was, yeah.
And I don't remember where they came from, but we had quite a few of them. So I asked the St. Francis Yacht Club if they could help us out, and so they said, sure. We've got some certified dinghy instructors, and I said, yeah, we've got a lot of El Toros.
Well, they wanted calmer waters too, for their juniors to sail in.
Yeah, over here rather than the city front.
Right. Right.
And so we tried it. It never worked. We just didn't have enough kids.
But we did. I mean, that's another thing I've come through my telltales. It is I mean, we had the junior sailing program, and I think it was like 14 sign-ups, and we had it, but it didn't.
It just
didn't
no
work.
sustainability.
Well, the thing is, most of the kids around here that are interested in sailing, or their parents got them interested in sailing, whichever, they were all over at next door at San Francisco Yacht Club.
Yeah.
Well, the kids, they want to be with their friends.
Sure.
Sure. Why would a few of them want to come over here when all their friends are?
And that program was already in place at San Francisco? They already had
It was
their...
beginning at
just
that
beginning.
time. It was.
So it
in
wasn't
its
as though we
infancy.
were competing with them at all. It just didn't...
I think that if we had had the real estate, we
Mm-hmm.
might have won out, but they've got real estate, they've got
Yes,
room.
they do.
Right.
And
right.
we'll never be able to compete with it. We've got our footprint and there's no way we can expand.
Well, certainly, with the great work that the membership committee has done, I mean, I think about all the members that have joined when we were closed first for renovation and then later for COVID-19, and the kids are coming in and they're, for the most part, behaving, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing these conversations, because if you skip a generation, you really lose a sense of the legacy of an organization. So it's really, this is our bridge for these newer members coming in and their kids, and there's so much history, as Yuta will tell you, just finally pulling everything out of the closet that we had in the way of artifacts and everything you could think of, and getting it sorted out and digitized, and giving members an opportunity to access that. If they're at all interested in history, they'll definitely be interested.
Well, I tell you guys and Will and Michael are doing a hell of a job. I gotta compliment you guys. You guys are doing
It's a great team.
job.
Yeah.
It's a good team.
And it's very tedious, isn't it? I know it is.
They-
And of course, I don't mean to not disinclude you, because I know how hard you work.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, well,
So
but that's,
appreciate
but that's,
It's a labor of love.
but that's exactly, that's the, I mean, you grew up here. I sort of feel like, well, Peter and I feel it's almost like we grew up here.
yeah.
We didn't.
Well,
but that
I
was-
do feel like I grew up here.
Yeah, I mean, this
And
was
you
where
too,
we
as long as
came
we've
when
been
we
members,
came
my
to
goodness.
California, so this was it. So the club has always been kind of our second home.
Yeah.
So of course you do something that is a labor of
Well,
love.
you want to give back.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
absolutely.
do. So Chris, ma'am. So now you were the husband and the wife team, and you were sailing, and you were doing all of this, boating stuff together. So when the nominating committee asked you to be on the board, what was your thinking
On the board?
there? When you had been on the board.
Well, when they asked me to be on the board, I said, I'm happy to volunteer my time, and I want you to know I have no intentions of going up the flag. I was still working full-time.
Right.
Little did you know.
So,
That's how they.
Well, that is Chris's. That you're in here.
so I said, if you still want me to serve knowing that I'm not a candidate, then I'm happy to serve.
And you probably at that time, I don't mean you per se, but the bylaws, they were changed recently.
They were changed under Kim, I think before she was Commodore.
So a life member
As she was
could-
going up the flag, I think
Yeah,
she
the
was
life member could
changing
go up
them
the
because life members couldn't hold office.
Right, could be on the board, but they could not
Right,
go
Oh.
up
couldn't
the
hold
flag.
office. And the reason behind that was, it was felt that if you're a life member and you're not paying dues, you shouldn't be making decisions
Right.
that affect dues.
Oh, well, okay. Well, that changed.
That changed.
Yeah.
That changed.
So then you
And
were
so,
approached to go up the flag. And what?
which I said no. I was on the nominating committee. And we couldn't really find anybody that wanted to do it. And everybody kept looking at me. And I said, look, we just sold the business. I just retired. why would I want to get out of the frying pan and jump into the fire?
Exactly.
And I said, no way. But then as I was thinking about it, realizing that Bill was slowing down, and I wasn't sure whether I was ready to slow down to Bill's pace, which if I didn't find something else to do, that's what I saw was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I changed my mind and called Kim and said, I've changed my mind. I don't want to come to a screeching halt. I don't
Yeah.
think I can.
Yeah.
And I think it was the right decision.
And then you made history as far as...
Well, I didn't intend to.
No, I mean, that's just what happened.
And I don't know, do you call that history?
I do. No, but when you look at, you know, Diana, she was the first female Commodore, and then you are the first
Life member.
male or female, you are the first life member to go up the flag. I mean, that's something we will use in the
Yeah.
scavenger.
Yeah.
No,
for
but
sure.
I mean, that is part of our history. You
Right.
know, when did the first life member become the Commodore? So.
We, you know, as you know, we talked earlier with your sister and brother, but recently we've been exchanging things with the Belvedere Tiburon Landmark Society, and recently they shared with us some old tapes of cooks and waiters and some other things. Now, I never knew your father, but he appeared in a couple of those, and he was very distinguishing. He was dressed in his coat and tie.
Oh,
and
He never went
articulate.
anywhere. He never went anywhere without a tie.
Yeah, and I could tell that. And you know, maybe you might want to talk about your father for a moment, just a little bit of background. And he,
Well, I wish that he had taken a leadership role in the club. He never wanted to be. He never wanted to go up the flag. So he was. I mean, he was on committees, and I think he was on the board, but he never took a leadership role. Of course, he was running his own business and traveled a lot. And because of his attitude, if you want to call it attitude, my brother never did either.
Well, your brother was on board. He was on my board.
Right. They both were on boards, but they never would go up the flag.
right.
So I'm
Later on, your sister did at a different
at
yacht club.
Tahoe Yacht
Yeah.
Club, but so I'm the first of the family
The family that went.
that bit
that
to go up.
But the sailing bug was injected in all three of you at an early age, right?
Well, we grew up on the Belvedere Lagoon, so
Yeah.
and Dad was the sailing instructor for all the kids on the lagoon. So they all would come to our house, and he would teach off our dock. I was too young at the time, but so I mean it's a part of our
Yeah.
life.
So she didn't get any lessons. They just put her in Eltor
And
and
pushed me off.
pushed her off.
Yeah. Did they make sure you knew how to swim first?
I think I knew how to swim. I remember that. I mean, swimming was such a big part of our lives. That's what we did all summer. And I remember I always had to have my life jacket on. And I remember once I forgot to put it on, jumped in the water, and didn't even realize I didn't have it on. And I'm swimming around, and my brother or sister, I don't remember which, said, "Hey, you don't have your life jacket on." And then I went boom. Anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was such a sailing, racing family. I mean, you two were racing, your dad was racing, you were racing against your dad.
Well, and we
Oh,
were racing
brother.
against my
Remember-
sister.
and
We
your
had three
sister,
Islander
and you were-
36s in
Wow.
the family, and we
Yeah,
were all
exactly.
racing against each other in the same fleet.
So I heard one story about you. I don't know if it was you that were the skipper or if you were there too, but that was going up to Vallejo.
Oh, it was
Wait.
me and my
Oh.
dad, against my dad.
Oh, I was flying, so
I ran him into the
Chris-
mud.
Chris
She ran
was-
him in and went.
Chris was skippering the boat.
Isn't that true?
I ran him into the mud. He had his depth finder on fathoms instead of feet. And so he thought he was in plenty of water, and he
It
wasn't.
wasn't.
So the sweet,
Well,
so the
you
sweet,
gotta-
the sweet daughter, she passed
But
that.
you gotta
and
continue the
did
story.
a few little things.
Chris, you have to continue the story about what your dad said.
He disowned me when we got to Vallejo. But he was trying to pass me to windward, is what.
Okay.
No,
Going down
actually,
the-
what her father said was, I should have dropped her on her head when she was young.
So it was a very competitive family, to say
In
the
a
least.
friendly way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But there would be dinner table discussions, I suppose.
Oh, sure.
But weren't there always, I remember sailing with you, a few times. And there was dinner at your parents' house when we came in. That was sort of what you did, or the crew, that's what they would do, come to your parents' house for dinner
Well,
and talk about the racing, the day.
Well, my dad felt that a successful racing crew is one that was a family type feeling, and so he always had meals involved with the crew after racing, just to give everybody a chance to tell their tales and
Yeah.
have fun together.
Well, way beyond that, Russ used to treat all of his crew to dinner at the Corinthian every Friday night.
Well, he took his racing very seriously. So there was always a token person that could come on the Friday night races, because as far as he was concerned, the Friday night races were just as serious as the YRA. So it would rotate. Every crew member's significant other, one could come. And it was a different one every time. And they just had to sit back there and be quiet. And then he would treat them all and their wives and significant others to dinner here at the club every Friday night
nice.
after the race.
Wow.
It was a big deal.
Wow.
But I also remember that the family, when we started to sail, the women's sailing, not women's sailing seminar, but women's sailing.
Man
on the day.
face. Man face.
Man face. The family, the women, the gals would be out there, and then the family would be out like spectator boats, and
Supportive.
It was big support from your family, which is
Well, that's when my sister Donna was skippering.
Hmm.
Up against Jocelyn Nash, it was very competitive.
Wow.
She wanted to beat her.
Yeah, yeah.
We almost had her.
Never though, huh? Close but
Don't
no
get
cigar.
us in the end.
Yeah. And just jumping way back for a moment, did you know Russ before you guys got involved?
Yes, oh yeah.
Uh-huh. So when it became obvious that his youngest you guys were going to get married, was that with full blessing and all that?
It was from him, but it wasn't from all the club members. The club members picked sides. Bill kind of had a reputation for loving and leaving. And he was living on his boat in the harbor. He was living on the Islander 36.
That's right. Yeah.
And while he was flying, so he was gone 4 days out of the week, but the 3 days that he was home was on a birthday 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so the club members saw what was going on, comings and goings. And so when we got engaged, most of the club members that were active at the time, sitting around the bar, were making wagers as to whether this was really going to. And there were quite a few club members that bet against me.
And how many years later?
We were married in 78.
It's been
So
42 years.
Yeah, yeah. So
A lot of people
43,
were wrong.
43,
So a lot of
43.
people were wrong.
Yeah.
Well, it's been 43 years and we're still speaking.
yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Well, everyone has an opinion, and again, this is a family, and it always is interesting how people read things, and a lot of times they're more comfortable talking about other people than themselves. So that's.
Well, I never took offense by it. I
Yeah.
figured if they were betting against me, they were really on my side and trying to protect me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't see it as,
Yeah.
as a bad thing.
Yeah.
So what do you, the two of you, I mean, here we are in 2021, and the club is, 135 years old?
It's,
135. So what do you see, like where we are right now with our sort of membership and the different type of members we have? Where do you see the future? Where do you see we are going?
I actually think the club is in one of the better states than I can recall.
Mhm.
I think that I don't see any division. I think everybody's, everybody's working together, and everybody feels like a family. And I see the club in a good place.
I do too.
And whether this is a popular decision or not, but I spent a lot of time thinking about how, the club can deal with the junior issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually changed my mind in all the time I've spent trying to figure out how to have a successful junior program. I've changed my mind thinking that maybe it's more of an advantage for us not to worry about it. That there's plenty of other family-oriented clubs around that maybe we shouldn't worry about it. And that maybe being not focused on children might be positive for us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you want that on tape, but
Oh, no.
No, I
that's-
think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that's fine, because that's what I think we are hearing a bit too is, I mean, even this year,
Well, the
Kevin
thing is
Rayford, he
let me
tried.
hear what she has.
I mean, Kevin tried and, tried to form a committee.
Yeah, I was on it.
And I think they are getting the same, kind of going, well, it's just not
This is
really
this
in
is a club where you can come to and have a quiet evening without with kids are always welcome,
Sure.
but we don't focus on it.
No.
We focus on providing a lovely atmosphere to come down and enjoy, and I think it's a winning
I
strategy.
think we're in a really good place right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell this story that I've told 100 times, but for this interview I'm compelled to tell it again. When the Navy was still here with quite a presence, up until Moscone, and some of his policies kind of forced the Navy out, but we used to have a very strong naval presence here. And so Admiral John Bidoff was the ranking admiral, the ranking commander on the West Coast on the Pacific Naval Fleet. And we invited him to opening day, and he and his wife Maureen. And which Chris and I got to be very good friends with John and Maureen, actually. And so this opening day, lunch or breakfast, whatever you want to call it, I was standing out on the race deck upstairs, just outside the dining room with Admiral Bidoff, John, and we were watching part of the Blessing of the Fleet. And here was a man who'd been all around the world. And he looked at me and he said, "My God, Bill, this is a national treasure."
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is. And I mean, we hear that, being, on membership, me for being on membership for so many years, it's always, why did you join the club? And it is the clubhouse, because it is a treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the warmth, the friendliness,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes up time after time after time after time. So when you are saying, we have what we have, and we are in the space where we are, it's true, and that's what draws new members to the club.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I can say, because that's what we hear, all the time. It's friendly, warm, great membership.
And things evolve, but you don't want them to evolve where each era is a major change. We've been able to sort of, I think, maintain that spirit, and get over these bumps in the road that come up every once in a while. And I mean, this renovation was trying for a lot of people, and then the shelter.
Yeah, but look how beautifully it turned
It
out,
sure did. Yeah.
you know?
You don't hear a lot of people complain afterwards,
No, thank goodness.
Yeah, yeah. And it's safer. I mean, we've been very fortunate. I mean, she's an old lady, and there
Wow.
was some deferred maintenance.
I
Well,
don't
we,
know. I believe that this club had ghosts.
Oh, I know it did.
Yeah, and we've heard that.
And,
Well, we can tell you some stories, I'll tell you.
and I always felt that the ghosts were here to protect the club, and they did. Because I remember we had a kitchen remodel up years ago, and they pulled the boards off behind the stove, and all the timbers back there were scorched and
Fried.
yeah, that a fire had started, but it went out on its
Went out.
own.
Someone put it out.
So,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
I don't hear stories anymore. I think the ghosts are gone now, because they can rest in peace knowing that the club is safe, and so they're finally finding their peace. I'm gonna miss them, because they were part of our history, and just a wonderful story to be able to tell.
I could tell you the most convincing one that you've probably ever heard. We had is Ray still a member here or not? I don't know.
Ray's not with us anymore.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. So we had this member, Ray Burke. Do you remember Ray Burke? He was a real big man. Big kind of-
Anyway, that doesn't matter, because
Yes, it does.
the person he was with is married to somebody else now.
Well, anyway, so
Oh, there.
So,
So
okay,
anyway.
well on that.
So that doesn't matter. Anyway, so Ray was a rancher. He had a big ranch
I remember.
up north, and so anyway, I'll never forget. It was one February, Friday night, and we're sitting at the bar, and so Ray comes and sits down next to me.
You were Commodore at the time.
Yeah, and he's white as a sheet, and he's kind of has a natural tan all the time, So he sits next to me, and he's shaking, and he says to me, he says, "Bill," he says, "there's something I got to tell you," and I said, "Well, go ahead, Ray. What is it?" He says, "I just went upstairs to use the men's room upstairs, and I'm walking back past the stage, and a cold wind hits me, and the curtains billow out, and this voice says, 'Will.'
Well, you also had Anna Peachy as your manager when you were Commodore. I think the ghosts were very lively that year, because she was saying that there were pictures, some of the Commodore pictures flew off the wall one day. That's when her office
just
was.
horizontally off
But
the-
there
Just-
flew off the. So we've got lots of
Yeah.
ghost stories.
I think
So-
that's something too with I mean, there's supposedly no one in the club, and all of a sudden the phones were starting to blink, like.
Yeah.
Well, I remember having the Women's Auxiliary, which it was called back in those days. We'd be down here having a meeting, nobody else in the building, and all of a sudden you'd hear the door shut upstairs and somebody walk across the floor.
That's a lot of ghost stories.
Yeah.
That's a lot of ghost
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
And
But I think he's gone now.
I have to ask, I see in your shirt, Toilers, does that have any connection at all with the club? That's just, because we do, we've had numerous of our conversations talk about the Pelicans and all the work that they did, and
We did a lot of work.
yeah.
We did a lot of work. I can't tell you how many days we spent under this club gun-iting all the pillars to reinforce them.
Why were you called the Pelicans?
I wish I knew. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know
No,
why.
because
Do you remember, Chris?
No.
Yeah, how that name came.
Yeah.
How that name
I don't know who came up
about.
with it, but that's what we called ourselves.
Yeah, and then Bob Thorman, we did the interview, the conversation with Bob, and he had one of the V-neck
Sweaters.
So
With
we
the
have
pelican.
that sort of as the history and artifacts. We have that with the pelican on. So that brought up the question,
Yeah, I don't know
why
who
were you
came up
called
with
the Pelicans, or how did that name come about?
I don't know. I don't know who came up with it, but
You weren't really part of that too much because you were flying.
Fine.
well, I was as much as I could be, but
Yeah.
yeah, we did a lot of work down here on weekends, shoring up this club. This is an old building, and we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to keep this building from slithering into the bay.
Yeah.
This building takes a lot of maintenance.
When you think about what it has to withstand, and it's withstood it for a whole lot of years, it's pretty amazing. Is there anything that you'd like to see happen in the future? I know I think we're all in agreement. We're in a pretty good place right now, but if there's anything you'd like to see, I think your point's well taken. That let's not try to force the issue of a junior something or other, but if that's going to happen, let's let it happen naturally. So.
Well, if you're asking me what I would like to see in this club, I would like to see this side of the club developed. I've talked about that for years, extending the deck around and developing this area down here for junior sailing or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's our property. It's wasted. We're not utilizing it.
Well, I can tell you, during my tenure, that has been put to bed. That isn't gonna happen.
Yeah.
And why was that? Why was that, Chris?
Well, in order to get the proper spacing out, we have to encroach on property that's not ours in a certain corner.
Okay.
And the city of Belvedere just basically said,
No,
that isn't gonna happen.
don't even bother.
No, that isn't gonna happen.
No, I know that has been talked about for
Yeah.
A long
quite
time.
a while.
So,
Many years.
but they tried. They
Yeah.
certainly looked into it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's ironic, our best sun in the summer is on this side,
yeah,
and
wouldn't it be nice?
and in the winter it's here, but it's also a lot colder. So
what would you like? I mean, can you think of anything that you could see as a change in the future? Or happy?
No, I think the direction the club is going in is the right direction, and I'm proud to be a member of the club.
yeah,
And I think when you see all the people that are coming in as new members, I think whatever we're doing is the right thing, because it's working.
Yeah,
yeah,
It's working.
yeah.
it is
And
working.
and the people that do join, I think they are happy.
Yeah.
I think they come around, and I think they like the camaraderie, and we try to create a family environment that everybody, when you become a member, you're part of the family. And I think we go out of our way to make everybody feel comfortable, and there isn't a table you can't go sit down at.
That's right.
You'd be
That's true.
welcomed
No,
at
that's-
any table.
That's right.
It's very true. It's very true.
And it was really during your term as Commodore where we got the support to put oxygen into the History and Artifacts Committee, and that was really important. And I think, again, before you see it, it doesn't really mean anything. But I think now we're getting enough now that's visible that people are really appreciating it, and it can only add, I think, to how they feel about their club.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah. Everything is going in a great direction.
yeah, that's great. Well,
Well-
unless you have anything more,
No, I'm so happy that we are able to do this and get you down here.
Yeah.
We have talked about
Yeah.
the two of you for quite a while, and here we are. So
Yeah.
this is good.
Well, thank you,
this is
thank
great.
you for the
Yeah.
opportunity for us to express
Yeah.
ourselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And we will. Well, Mike, can sort of. Now he's going home. You're not going home right now, but tell what happens next.
Well, what happens is we're going to post this on our YouTube site.
Do you edit it first?
We're not editing yet.
We haven't been editing yet.
Not
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, let me try this.